So, RFID tech. Is the AV industry ready? It's a fair question. We are dealing with radio frequency technology, which is very much interfering with the equipment that we're using in an AV environment. Think of copper, think of metals, think about magnets, think about everything that's basically bad for a radio frequency signal. RFID technology took leaps, definitely. But now we need to make sure, I'm going to cut this out. RFID technology made leaps, but now we need to make sure that it can be applicable to the audiovisual industry. And we have, at Rentman, we have invested quite some time actually to make that work. Okay, good. Before we move on, let me first introduce myself a little bit. In a month from now, I can say that I'm in this industry for 18 years already. I've been starting as DJ Joost, really. However, that turned into rental soon. Around 11 years ago, I decided to join the audiovisual industry in sales. I've been meeting quite some companies ever since, and which gave me lots of insights on how they actually do their business. And especially in the last 6 years working at Rentman, they gave me lots of insights on their processes in particular. Now, what I've found is that the audiovisual industry, if you would take a look at their operations, it basically spreads itself over 3 elements, as I call it: communication, planning, and logistics. Let me just give you a quick example. Take crew scheduling, for instance. Of course, that affects your planning. However, we all know that planning crew is one thing. Making sure that the crew is aware of what they need to do is communication, and that's actually the biggest challenge. And that's why already planning and communication. If you would then add your warehouse processes to this, you would find logistics as well. So what you end up with is, let's say an item returns defective to your warehouse. Of course, that's a logistical process. But because something is defective, this would conflict with your future planning. So you need to make sure that you communicate your ass off to actually make it work again. So this is something that you constantly see coming by within an audiovisual industry, rental company: communication, planning, and logistics. Now, if you would take a look at our users, and especially the warehouse operations, we offer them 2 tools to actually overcome their challenges in that regard. We offer them the traditional piece of paper, just a packing slip, and we offer them a warehouse module. That doesn't necessarily mean that you need to start scanning, but at least it offers you a digital approach in which you can leave your additional equipment, alternative equipment, you can report everything defective, whatever happens. Now, that piece of paper is still being used by 49% of our customers. So that means that only half of our users are actually processing equipment, maybe line by line, or at least more accurately than when doing it on paper alone. Because of course, I do not have to explain that when you take a look at paper alone, people just ribble whatever they have packed additionally or defective, but nobody's taking a look at that anymore. Now, if you would then take a look at that 51% of our users that is using our warehouse module, you can see that only 49% of them are actually using the warehouse module as we intended it to be. Processing equipment line by line, maybe by the result of scanning, maybe doing it manually. Then 13% of the users are processing items in bulk. So for, let's say, a cable, for instance, I took 10 cables and processed 10 instantly. And then we have 38% that's just using the book everything button. So there is no accuracy in that at all. It's just book everything in bulk, and all of a sudden you have processed 40 different items. Now, amazingly, during the returning process, that's 59%. 59% of the rental houses is just processing items returned without evaluating it up front. So that actually leaves us with some interesting statistics. Because, for instance, if you would see that there are over 1 million projects being processed by our users in 2022, you can wonder yourself how many projects were accurately returned. Prepare to be amazed, only 32%. Only 32% of projects are being processed, returned line by line. Now, out of those 1 million, how many projects went out with other equipment than initially planned? So what we've done is we have been taking a look at the amount of projects that were processed and the amount of times that the additional equipment feedback was provided. Here you have it, 488,028. So that means that 45.5% of projects are being sent away with equipment, and then let's hope that it returns. Yeah? So 1 out of 2 projects goes out differently from how it was initially planned. Now, of course, this number, especially the 488,000 one, is something that we could only conclude from what has been reported, right? Again, 51% of our users are actually using this digitally, so we can only learn from them. But that's interesting, because that leaves us with approximately half of our users not using that digital approach, but still handing out additional equipment, of course. That's just a practical thing. So that means that 238,645 projects went out with additional equipment without it being reported. Now, if you then see that there are approximately, on average, 3 items added additionally to a project, then you can see that over 700,000 items were added and not asked for when returned. Yeah? Just to put this into perspective, that's the entire inventory of more than 200 AV rental houses. It's just given away in a year, and let's hope that it returns. There's no piece of paper that's asking for it whatsoever. Now, this is about processing return. And with processing return, I mean equipment goes out of the truck, back into the warehouse, and somebody checks if everything has been returned. But that doesn't say anything about a quality control. It could very well be that an item returns to the warehouse and then being taken out of the flight case, being tested whatsoever. Yeah, that's something that we cannot take from our data, so that's why I asked my network on LinkedIn, and here it is. 25% of the people say that they constantly check. Every time something returns to the warehouse, they will see if it's actually in one piece. Now, dry hire jobs, if you would take those in, then it's approximately 54% that's being tested return. It's pretty amazing, because dry hire, that means that equipment is being used by somebody else. So if that item would be defective, then it's up to him or her to report this. But only 1 out of 2 jobs is actually being checked returned. Now, still, let's remember that our users, 70% of them, they actually decide to invest in tools to overcome these kind of issues. But still, it's pretty amazing to see that if there are over 100 million of items planned in 2022, you can wonder how many of them got returned too late. Now, I'll give you a little spoiler. Only 5% of the jobs are delayed. But now we're looking at the amount of items found within. 68 million items have returned delayed. Well, the reason why, not because they were physically returned delayed, but simply because they are returned, we just put them in the shelves and we forget to report them back. That's the reason why. And if you speak to AV professionals, it's pretty clear that people are willing to do this, however, it's just simply too time consuming. But refusing doing this, that's why we believe it's exceptional that an AV rental house is a logistical shit together. And that's where we believe where RFID enters. Now, I'm standing in front of a crowd where AV professionals have the ability to turn this grass field filled with cows into a festival terrain where 50,000 people are having the times of their lives. And that, of course, is a logistical challenge. And you need to know what you're doing in order to make that work. And the AV industry has proven themselves time and time again that they're capable of doing it. But that we're doing this doesn't mean that people are that this is new to anybody else. So on-site stress, we all know, we all understand, we all feel like the amount of stress that it comes as soon as your logistical challenges result in planning issues. But again, this is where we believe RFID comes in. With RFID, we allow you to trace your equipment piece by piece. That even goes to an extent of cables, for instance. By scanning the surface of your flight case, or at least hovering your scanner over it, you will be able to see and find what's exactly located within. Now, there are a few basic benefits that come with this. Let me just introduce you to a few. So first of all, speeding it up heavily. If you would just compare RFID to QR code scanning, for instance, if you would take a few lighting fixtures in a meat track, 30 seconds you would spend on scanning them piece by piece if you would be using QR codes, and only 3 seconds if you would be using RFID. So that's the biggest speed improvement, of course. And in general, this might be pretty exceptional, 90%. However, in general, it's safe to say that in all use cases, it will save you approximately 66% of your time. Now, increasing accuracy, that's definitely one. The idea is increasing accuracy. The increasing accuracy lays in the fact that you are processing your items while they're on the move. And with that, I mean, if you take a look at the example of the previous example, where I would be walking to my warehouse and would take 50 cables, for instance, I would count 50 cables, I would scan the QR code and say that I've taken 50 cables. But nobody will check if I indeed took 50, because there will be that I accidentally only picked 49. And that's where the increasing accuracy of RFID kicks in. It basically allows you to run a check very quickly. In just 4 seconds, you would have scanned if you indeed took 50 cables or accidentally only took 49. Second one, and that's a major one, you're increasing your traceability as well. And with that I mean, all your assets, up to a cable, clamps, whatever it is, everything becomes unique, everything becomes serialized. Now the power of that is that as soon as a cable or whatever returns, you will be able to understand from which project it is returning, simply because that serial number was associated with a project that was leaving. And that means that you will be able to process multiple projects simultaneously return in bulk, while still be able to trace which project has returned fully and which didn't. And that's really helpful because it's not new to anybody that if a festival leaves, you make sure that it's sorted per area, but if it returns, it's just one big bulk of equipment, and good luck with that. Now, I'm not the only one to talk today. We have interviewed quite some companies that already have, that are familiar with RFID, that have invested in this technology quite a while ago. And I've interviewed Lust4Life and Resolution X. Yeah, let's hear it from them.
We've been in touch a while ago and understood that you guys are using RFID. Now, I want to make it very clear to everybody watching this that you guys are no Rentman user, and also you're not using the RFID hardware that we provide nowadays. But before we dive in, could you please first of all introduce yourselves?
Hi, I'm Peter and I work for Resolution X here in Melbourne, Australia as Technology Manager.
Hi, I'm Tim, Managing Director of Resolution X.
So what made you guys decide to invest in RFID in the first place?
In reality, when we moved into that space, it was about serializing the stock. It wasn't about RFID.
So is it fair to say that you guys decided to invest in labels and thought you might as well include RFID then as well?
Effectively, yes.
Yeah.
Yep. And also tested them to make sure that in the majority of our products that those labels actually worked.
So if serializing was the core objective, do you believe RFID enables you the traceability that ideally would come with?
I think we're already achieving that now.
Yeah.
It's not, I don't think we're at the point where we're happy with what we're doing, but we're at a point where we're substantially better than where we were before we were serialized.
The benefits of individual audit trail on products is incredible. It has fundamentally also changed how we can track our equipment.
What's your experience so far in scanning RFID in the warehouse?
The higher the density of RFID tags within the factory environment, the less accuracy you get.
If you're next to equipment that's being prepped onto a job, then you run the risk of returning something before it even left.
In saying that, we saw the value in RFID being faster than just barcoding. And we've certainly seen that it can be faster in some circumstances. In other areas, it's probably on par in speed. So it is an advantage to use RFID over straight barcoding.
I think too, with RFID, when we adopted RFID, it was still new to our industry, and it still is new to the industry. And so we made a decision to invest in the equipment that existed at the time, knowing that RFID is going to continue to develop.
Have you done testings with gates?
So we've had less than ideal gate setups and gotten 85% accuracy, let's say.
You know, obviously, we'd all love RFID to be the magic bullet of you wheel it through a gate into the truck and you wheel it through a gate out of the truck and that's your gig all done. But fundamentally, that's never going to be reliable enough for our industry with the variable nature of the stock.
Using handhelds, would you say that 100% accuracy is within reach?
A lot closer. because the operator is involved in the action of scanning, it's explicitly every time, you've got a case open in front of you and you're thinking about how many items you're scanning. So you've got a line of 10 moving lights, you need to scan 10 things.
Does using a hand scanner come with downsides as well?
One problem we ran into was that our truss, when we mounted RFID tags on it, acts as a big antenna. And so it would reflect the signals off the truss further away. So you might find that you're pointing at truss and you actually end up with the road case behind you. So it made us really aware of how your surroundings have to work.
How crucial would you say 100% accuracy actually is?
Going into a truck, you want 100% accuracy because you want to be able to check you put everything in. On the way out, you can take a more lenient approach with RFID. You can say, well, if 85% comes in, that still rules out needing to scan with a handheld 85% of stock.
To what extent do you believe should an AV rental company adjust to let RFID work?
That's one of the next challenges that I see as we move forward, is to actually start to go, okay, right, now we understand the technology more. What about, do we need to change a little bit for the technology?
Do you have any advice to other AV professionals that consider using RFID?
So if you're going to go down the RFID path, you really need to commit, basically, and running it on some products and not others. So if you're already serialized and you want to put RFID on some products. So again, if you were a production company with soft goods and audio and lighting, yes, you could completely do soft goods. But the advantages doesn't come in until you run it across all your inventory.
It doesn't solve all your problems. In fact, it might create more than you think it does. As we were talking about earlier, the space around your scanning, you've got to know what you're getting into. So really test it is the best thing we can say, is get the hardware you want to use, and go hands-on with it.
Hi, Chris. Thanks for meeting me today. Now it's your turn. So firstly, could you please introduce yourself and Lust for Life?
I'm Chris Laarmans. I'm the CEO of Lust for Life. Lust for Life is an European audio and visual production company providing sound, lighting and rigging and LED screens for medium to big productions like festivals, touring, TV shows, public and corporate events, and this into the whole European market.
Now, our conversation about RFID, it started around 3 years ago, I believe. You decided to invest in RFID way earlier than we were able to offer or support it. But either way, you decided to move on. What can you tell us about this?
So, Lust for Life is one of the early adopters, I think, from Rentman. We're using Rentman already for 6 or 7 years. Only the warehouse management system, we are using a third party, which is now fully integrated.
And what made you decide to invest in RFID in the first place?
Yeah, our strategy, long-term strategy of Lust for Life is becoming an operational excellence. We have now full traceability inside and outside our premises of all our assets, and this really on serial number level. And our RFID integration is just step one for us in a full new automatic warehouse, which is planned on 2025.
An automated warehouse? Why is warehouse automation so important to you?
Yeah, as everyone knows, everyone is looking for finding good skilled people. So what we can automate in the future, we have to automate as much as possible.
Would you say that RFID alone already allows you to do more with less resources?
On the end of the day, it's reducing the human mistakes. As long as you're working with people, you have the risk of human mistakes. All this RFID can help us to reduce this number of exceptions, and this is doing it.
So RFID for you means foolproofing your warehouse while still gaining accuracy. Is there more to it?
Exactly. In the first step, we had not in the target that we have the full traceability on the internal and the external logistics of, and mainly from our assets on the serial number level. It's helping also a lot in from a legal point of view. A loading list we have to create, the carnets which you have to make on the serial number levels, like the insurance list you have to provide to the organizers.
What do you believe are the biggest challenges when implementing and or using RFID?
I think the major challenge of the RFID is having reliable readings when you make a scan by a handheld or by in this way by a gate. We are using also the gates. Uh, it has to be correct for 200% all the time.
Do you believe hardware could make a difference when aiming for 100% accuracy?
Hardware can make the difference, but I think first of all you have to use the right tech for the right asset. You have to find out the best practice on using the right tech on the right position on the asset, combined with the strength of your RFID signal versus the potential crosstalk you can have.
How are you looking back on your implementation and insights? And do you have any advice for other AV professionals that are considering using RFID?
So the first idea was that we are going to introduce this project in 2 months. Very, very, very positive. This was a very positive plan. I can tell you 20,000, the tagging of 20,000 assets, it takes a while and it takes a good project plan.
Good. Thanks again, Chris Laarmans and and the guys from Resolution X to give us quite some insights in terms of RFID. Thank you a lot for that. I just want to take out a few things that I found very interesting. And the first quote for that will be from Chris. She said, "Your readings need to be correct for 200%. If not, the whole system becomes questionable." Now we can very much relate to this. 100% accuracy is something that we all strive, of course. Ideally, that would be 200%. I get her point. However, maybe this is also a bit unrealistic. Like we are, as said, RFID technology took leaps. However, it's not at a point where you can 100% rely on that what has been scanned actually can be considered to be the truth. We very much believe that RFID is a tool for you that makes it easier to check whatever you have packed, whatever you believe your reference is. So ideally, your warehouse process would look like something like this. You walk into your warehouse, you start packing everything that you need to pack, and then by using RFID, you would check if everything you should have packed is packed before you load it into your truck. And then, during the returning process, as you know exactly what should be returning, you could start scanning. And if there's any items that you're missing, you could walk into your warehouse and see if it's actually there. That you could all do by using RFID, simply because you can wave with your scanner and pick up that one particular serial number. Now, is this then worth it? Fair question, but yes, it still very much is. Because let's take the example of a flight case holding 30 cables, 10 times 3 cables for instance. It will take you 40 seconds to pack it. That will always be the case. Now it will take you again 40 seconds to check if everything that's in there should be in there. And then during the returning, again 40 seconds. By using RFID, it will take you 40 seconds to pack, 4 seconds to check, and then afterwards 4 seconds again. So there's quite some time saver in this, despite that you're only using it for the check. Now, second one, actually two ones. The higher the density of RFID tags within the warehouse, the less accuracy you have. And Peter actually followed up by saying, if you're next to items being prepped, you run the risk of returning items that haven't even left. Yeah, of course, that's not ideal. That makes total sense. And this is also where the technology kicks in. And this is also the reason why not every RFID tag could actually work within the AV industry. The point is, you want to have a tag that's powerful. And the reason why is simple, because you put that tag in a flight case with metal and copper and everything, that's not ideal. So you want it to be powerful, otherwise you will not be able to pick it up. Yet, you also don't want it to be too powerful, because then you would always scan it. If it's too powerful, you would just always scan the entire warehouse. And there are some use cases where this can be helpful. Think of, for instance, an OB truck that you want to be able to inventorize, therefore you want to have powerful tags. But in general, you want to have tags which are powerful, yet the range is within ideally 2 or 3 meters. And that's exactly what our challenge was. We started to invest in RFID, not necessarily to reinvent that piece of technology, not at all. This is something we are very well aware of, that others are better at than we are. Yet we understand the audiovisual industry. We understand the harsh environment that we're offering. And that's why we decided to invest in RFID in the sense of we wanted to find the right fit. We wanted to find the right hardware. And when we were looking into tags, because that was the main one, scannability, durability, and size. Scannability, because we want to make sure that indeed it is powerful, yet not too powerful. Durability, also a very important one, simply because you do not want to have an expiration date on your tags. If you would have an expiration date on your tags, you would have an expiration date on the accuracy of your warehouse, and of course that's the last thing that you want. Now size, I guess it speaks for itself. However, we foresaw with RFID tags that we wanted to have something that could fit into items, that could maybe even fit into cables and whatsoever. So we didn't want it to be too large. However, we also noticed that the smaller it gets, the less powerful it gets. So that was quite a trade-off there. Now, when we started to invest in this, we actually partnered up with a company called Alltech, and they supplied us hundreds of tags. And we also received other tags from already existing RFID users from the AV industry, simply to see what's the best fit. So this is just a few that we have received, but there were a few testings that we have done. One of them, for instance, be break them. We wanted to make sure that we could break them, or at least we want to understand what the point was of being able to break them. Now, that way we already noticed that bendable tags have an expiration date. Bendable tags can be bent once, twice, 10 times, 15 times, but it ends at a certain point. So as long as you're using bendable tags on a surface which is fixed, that's fine, but it's not, we believe, not the most ideal within the audiovisual industry. So that's why we decided to step away from those. Second one is, that's something we didn't encounter up front, but it does happen. If you would use tags and you would put them very close together, it actually interferes with each other. So if you scan, let's say, 10 tags that are piled up, chances are that you will only pick up 7, 8, 9, simply because the signal could interfere. So that was again a test that we needed to do, because of course we would run into a situation where one of our users would have a cable case filled with cables, 10 would easily get piled up, and they of course still need to be scannable. So yeah, and all the testings that we've done was not like looking at not looking at specifications on paper. We were very much just testing it on the go. Eventually, it had us ended up with these tags. They are indeed state of the art. Actually, they saved us a bit as well. We were getting to a point of thinking, okay, maybe RFID isn't as far as we want it to be, but then eventually our supplier came up with these ones. Yeah, we can very much say indeed that this is the right fit for the audiovisual industry. We have been doing lots of testings. People at the booth at PLS would have seen this as well. We have a cable case, 65 cables in there, and in 5 seconds you would have processed them all. It works, it is solid, there is no expiration date on this as well. And that means that we had to tweak it a bit, because when we received this was just a black tag. But what we've done is we added a QR code on it, and that QR code also, just like the tag itself, is associated with the number that you see there as well. So that way you can see it, interpret it on 3 different ways. Either you scan with RFID, or you scan with QR, helpful on site when using your phone to report something defective, or you can just read it with your bare eyes. So then we came to the point, okay, we found the tag, now we need to find the hardware to scan it. And ideally there would have been a gate. I mean, everybody that's from the AV industry and thinking about RFID technology, they all have the dream of basically pushing a flight case through a gate and you would have scanned it all. Even when we spoke to others, they said, ideally, I would just basically run my truck through a gate and then would have scanned everything that's found within. They can say that's not only a dream, it's a wet dream. It's just too far from what can be done. Now, gates is something that we have started to test extensively as well. We actually came to a point of having a gate. This is right in our basement. It was, just like Peter said, far from ideal. But it did allow us to do some scanning, to do some testings. The conveyor belt itself was a nice touch because we were able to just speed up that conveyor belt and see how the gate would then be performing. Now from here we realized that gates, first of all, are expensive, also in setups like this. But second of all, scanners are static here. like you can see one of the scanners right here, it's mounted statically. If it would not be able to pick up an item that's coming by, it would not be able to pick that up 2 seconds later as well, simply because it's mounted static. We very much need the flexibility of a handheld, of your wrist, so to say, in order for us to basically pick up that one tag which is hard to reach. Now there are gates that are making sure that these scanners aren't static, however, they cost a fortune. And that's where we eventually realized, okay, if we would have a handheld, it works well, it works very well, it only costs 2,000 euros. We would have a gate, which is performing okay, and it's costing approximately 10 times as much. So that's why we say, for now, handhelds. Handhelds, for now, is the way to go. And hopefully in the future, definitely, this will be more within reach. And already for the use case, as you can see it here, but hopefully with a bit more neat scanner, the conveyor belt where cables will be spread over and then being scanned on the go while going through your warehouse up to the cable streets, for instance, that could very well be done. But scanning flight cases is just a bit too tricky at this point. Now, once we had the hardware covered, so we found the right tech, we've made up our minds about scanners, we came to what does this mean for Rentman? We have our warehouse module being used by 50% of our users, and that was set up in such a way that it would assist our users to scan barcodes or QR codes. Now the difference between scanning a barcode or QR code and RFID is that if you would scan something by using bar or QR codes, you would scan it and instantly process it, because otherwise you wouldn't scan it. Now with RFID, it could very well be that you scan something, but accidentally picked up something that's right next to it. So you want to prevent that from happening and want to filter it out. So there's a step in between. Secondly, it can be the case that when you would be scanning QR codes, you just scan stuff piece by piece. But if you and 10 other colleagues would be scanning by using RFID, all of a sudden you would be processing hundreds of items in bulk at once. So that took us something from our service. So that was challenging for us, but we very much came to the point of like, how would we allow you to easily filter out the items that you picked up surplus, that you do not want to process, and furthermore. But that was one thing. And then the second one came. Because you have to think of it this way. You would have, let's say you would be a rental house, and you would decide to serialize everything that you have, like including all your cables, your clamps, everything. Then today you would have a cable and you would have a quantity of 100. But tomorrow you would have a cable and you would have 100 serial numbers. So instead of just having the figure 100 listed, you would need to list 100 different serial numbers. Now, of course, nobody here wants to be doing that piece by piece manually. And that's something that we wanted to automate. So that's why now the process is make sure that all your RFID tags are suited on your cables, and by scanning them, you would create, let's say, 100 different serial numbers, all associated with that particular cable. And there's way more to tell, but let's leave it with this. And I'd like to show you again a video, but this time I've interviewed users. We are running 5 test cases right now. 2 of them are AV rental houses, and they were willing to share their experiences. So let's take a look at that.
Hey Ronald, thanks for your time today. So firstly, could you please introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Ronald from DJ Gear. We are a company who supplies festivals in Europe with all the DJ equipment. And we are leading in Europe, I think, in that business.
What made you decide to invest in RFID? What problem did you expect it to solve?
The company is growing and growing and growing. In the past, we know we had everything clear for us, what was going to a festival or not. Now we get all the areas, we drive home, and on Monday we scan everything back, and then we see, oh shit, we're missing equipment from that stage.
So if I get you correctly, you want to be able to scan your items returned while still being on site. So in case you miss something, you can act when you're still there, right?
Yeah.
Now, you've decided to invest in RFID not that long ago. And quite frankly, you're still in the phase of implementation. So first of all, who do you look back on the investment in money?
You lose a lot of cables every year. And that's a lot of money.
So €1.65 per cable to prevent that from happening, is that worth it, you think?
Yeah, for sure. Every cable is €10 or more. So yeah.
And what about time spendings?
Yeah, first of all, the cables is the most work. The equipment also, because we must make everything open, put it inside.
Wait, you're hiding the tags on the inside of your equipment? Why did you decide to do that?
I want to hide them because it's a tool for us in the warehouse. It's not a tool for our customers or something. It's only for us. When they are on the outside, you can lose them.
So now I understood you've pasted around 1,500 tags so far. How much time did that take?
200, 300 hours now, I think. Yeah, it is a lot of work to do. But we had 4 or 5 crew guys on a long table, and we make a little bit of train. And then it's to do.
Thanks for sharing these insights, Ronald. Anything else you'd like to say to AV professionals that are considering using RFID?
RFID costs a lot of time and money, but it will be a good return of investment. Getting the company on a higher level, I think.
Hi, Jodrik. Before we start off, could you please introduce yourself?
My name is Jodrik van Wieren. I work at MAB AV as warehouse manager. We specialize in providing audiovisual solutions for mostly corporate events and television programs.
Now, what made you guys decide to invest in RFID?
We were having a lot of problems with accounting and sorting errors in our warehouse. So after the booking of the project was done, I was left with some physical cables, and Rentman app told me I was missing some other cables. So every time we needed to find out where the problem came from.
And now you've been scanning a lot already. What are your experiences so far?
In the past, we had a smaller warehouse, so I couldn't set the antenna volume that high. Then sometimes we need to rescan the case. But now when we have a bigger warehouse, I can scan at maximum. I don't have to recount. I just trust the system.
How does your warehouse process look like now you've applied to RFID?
When prepping a project, we didn't change the workflow all that much. We still use the QR scanner, and they all have a non-RFID scanner in hand. When the project is totally prepped, we go to the loading area. There we grab our RFID scanner to assign all the tags. At that point, the system knows which cable went where. And then it's done, it's get loading in the truck. And when we book the project back at the warehouse, then we just do RFID scanning and no manual recounting.
Are you satisfied with the process in the warehouse?
For now, this works. Maybe in the future, we need to rethink our work process. We always did it. But for now, this is our system.
So if I get you correctly, accuracy was your primary objective. Would you say you've achieved that level of accuracy you were looking for?
The chances when I count cables myself that I make an error, there is always a chance. But when I count with the RFID scanner, there's no chance in faults.
Would you say that there are side achievements as well, apart from achieving accuracy?
I expect that we only save time in the booking back part of the thing, but we use it as a check, so we always verify if we grab the right amount of cables, the right cables. So I wasn't expecting that.
So when we spoke earlier, I understood you went from 4 to 3 people in the warehouse due to RFID. What can you say about this?
Yeah, we have more time for other things now with the same amount of people, and some days we just use one person less. We went from 4 to 3 people, and we have time to save at the end of the day.
How are you looking back on the implementation? How much time did it take?
We did around 5,000 tags right now, and we have still 5,000 left to do. The implementation is very simple. You just put a tag on it and assign it, and it's done. But I was a little optimistic in my estimations. I thought it would cost around 1 minute a cable, but it was more like 1.5 or 2 minutes. Forgot to count all the handling of the cables. You need to grab them all from the bin, but then you need to assign them and put them back in the bin. I forgot all the logistics of it.
And if you look back on the entire project, what sticks?
Yeah, the first time we scanned, we did a test with Sven from Rentman. We tagged around 70 XLR cables, put them in a bin, and then we grabbed our hand scanner, and we were both surprised. We looked at each other and were laughing. Whoa, this is a good project.
What would your advice to other AV professionals be that are considering using RFID?
Do it. Yeah, just take the plunge, do it. With us, it was the picking faults we wanted to eliminate it and save time. It did it. So I know it's a big investment in time and money and equipment. Just do it.
So, thanks again, Ronald, Chadwick, for your time and sharing your experiences. Now, you have seen the hardware, you've seen the use cases and everything. Let's talk about the investment that comes with RFID to give you an idea. First of all, you're up for the question, what are you going to tag exactly? Are you going to tag only your high-valued assets, or are you going to tag everything? There are pros and cons to everything. The biggest pro for tagging everything would be that you would be able to trace everything on a serialized level. The biggest con to that would be that you need to tag everything. Now that means that you would be tagging 18 times the amount of items that you have if you would just focus on everything. If you will focus on your serialized items alone, then it's approximately, well, I think, then it's way less, of course. So 18 times. Then you get to a point of purchasing the tags alone. Just solely take a look at the hardware. Now, if we go to a use case where there are 10,000 tags involved, it sets you back approximately 16,500 euros. Combined with free scanners, a bit over 22,000 euros. There could be some additional costs, that is in terms of consultancy, for instance, if you'd like to include us advising you in how to apply this within your warehouse, how those processes would look like. There are costs involved. But let's sum this up with a total of approximately 27,000 euros. And you have 10,000 tags spread over your warehouse. Now, if you then take a look at the amount of time that it will take, the time it will take to tag your high-valued assets, that's too hard to say. Taking the flight case, opening it up, and then tagging the item itself, that was always around like 1 or 2 minutes for every item. However, then you get to a point where you need to associate that particular tag to that particular serial number within Rentman or your rental management software, and that can be quite lengthy, especially if the serial number is already there. So if you want to have some understanding, I would say somewhere between 3 and 5 minutes, except if you, just like DJ Gear, decide to actually open up everything and put it inside. Yes, of course, then it will take longer. But let's focus on bulk items. If you decide to take those in as well, tagging it alone takes around 20 seconds. We are providing accessories that will load the time up to 20 seconds. However, in practice, it's always 1 to 1.5, 2 minutes per cable or per bulk item, simply because you need to walk into your warehouse, take all the items, make sure that it's prepared, and that before you can actually start scanning it, or tagging it. Now again, realizing that creating those serial numbers based on what you have tagged, that's the easy bit here. Now, but let's turn it around, because of course we want to understand like the amount of tags that you need to apply and how much time that will take, but let's calculate it the other way around. If you would have one full-timer that would have been working the average of 175 hours within an average working month, and he would have pasted 3,000 tags, then that would cost him around 3.5 minutes per tag. I think this is realistic. For everybody, it will be somewhere in between here. Except, again, if you have an exceptional case like opening up everything, yeah, then it can take much longer. Now, so question remains, could RFID be a solution for you? Then ask yourself, what do you find more important? Just like you said. Do you simply want to have a speedy process? If it's all about speed, then just stay away from this. Stay away from RFID, stay away from QR codes, stay away from digital processes, just solely rely on yourself. If you believe that you've counted to 50 cables, go for it. That's the most speedy one. QR codes is something that you can very much apply to actually have traceability, to already understand where all your high-valued items are going, for instance. However, it takes quite some time to scan them simply because you always need to physically find the tag before you process it. And that's where RFID comes in. If you want to have traceability, if you want to have double checks, and if you want to do that within as little time as possible, that's where RFID really is offering a solution. Again, to sum it up, RFID will allow you to be 18 times as accurate, because just like we said, the amount of items that you have multiplied with 18 sets the potential amount of serial numbers. So that means, compared to if you would only be scanning your high valued assets, you will be 18 times as accurate if you would be using RFID over all your items. And again, that's helpful because 1 out of 2 jobs are going out differently with different equipment than what they initially were planned with. Good. Thanks everybody. Any questions?